Welcome back. My name is David Hopper, and this video is part of a 26-part series that follows the alphabet from A to Z. Each letter represents this important part of the launch process for new ministries, new campuses, and new churches. In this video, we are talking about Q, questions and answers. A friend of mine made a suggestion as I launched a new church. You should have a time of Q&A after your service. I looked at him and said, what? Do you realize the can of worms you'd be opening in the middle of a church service? I mean, what if they asked me about marijuana or something? He said, are you confident in what you're saying? I'm like, yeah. And it dawned on me that not only am I incredibly confident in what I'm talking about because I've studied it for weeks preparing the sermon, but even more than that confidence in the message is how much I leave on the cutting room floor as I put that final 20-minute message together. There's hours of stuff I don't put in there. A Q&A time would allow me to pull a lot of that stuff that I couldn't use as people dig a little deeper into the message. Of course, the real reason that no one wants to do this is the questions that will surely be lobbed out that you don't really want to answer on the spot. Pastor, what's your feelings about homosexuality? Pastor, what do we do about those Democrats? Because of course every church is only full of Republicans. Please catch my sarcasm here, because most likely you have Democrats, Republicans, and independents in the same room. We better be able to preach beyond politics. Pastor, my friend's child committed suicide. Do you think they'll be in heaven? This is our real fear, that a random hardball will be fired at our head in the middle of a nice talk on how important prayer is in our life. By the way, every question I just said was asked of me in front of the entire church when I opened for a Q&A time. What I find far more interesting is how in my many years of doing this, it only happened a couple times, and most of the time, people just wanted to give this quick point of how the message related to their life. The questions were clarifying points, things that I had said, and it allowed for deeper learning. It was awesome. What is even more surprising in my mind was how when those random, difficult questions did come up, they weren't that hard to answer. I have a group of pastors I meet with regularly, and we talk about that hard stuff for hours while hanging out around a fire pit. So if you're willing to do the work, you will find when you're challenged, you'll be ready. We need to realize why we are launching this thing in the first place. No matter if you're launching a church, a new ministry, a business, or something else, it is about people. And people have questions. No matter what you're doing, people have questions. Take the time to answer the questions that real people are asking. If you insulate yourself with people that are only like you watch news only you like, you go to the places that only you and your friends understand, then you probably shouldn't be having times of Q&A. Everybody already knows what you believe. You post it daily on your social media sites. And for those of you watching these videos who actually want to launch something that changes our world, you will need to understand every side of every issue. This world is not black and white, and every question does not have one answer for and one answer against. Sometimes questions can be answered over 100 different ways. I'm not saying they're all right. I'm saying our world is far more complex than 2 news channels, 2 ideological political parties, and so on. If you're open to talk to people and allow for real conversation, people will be far more interested in what you're launching. We need to understand that we live in a post-Christian world here in the US. When I launched a church in 2014, I met people on a weekly basis who did not know who Jesus Christ was. They had nothing against the church, Christians, or God. They had not thought about it at all. So if you live in this insulated world that I mentioned before, you can't even imagine that people have not heard about Jesus Christ, or at least if they have heard of him, they have not thought about how he would have an effect on their life. We need to understand the culture that we live in if we want to make a difference within it. Q&A gives us a chance to understand where someone is coming from and to find ways to connect people within the world that they understand. We need to look for those connecting points, for people or the unique illustrations that will bring an abstract concept to a personalized relationship. Which brings me to a key point of the launch process. Understand the culture you're entering. What is the history of that place? How is this city formed? How did it come about? What are the demographic changes that happened over the years? What do the locals say about this place that you want to launch in? What does the architecture say? What do people do for fun there? What are the greatest needs of that area? How are you meeting those needs with what you're launching? As I push into launching churches or ministries, you also need to have lots of Q&A moments for those who are new. The first-time visitor to whatever you're doing is the most valuable information that you could ever get, and you need to find ways to get that information. I took every new person to coffee and I would pick their brain. They may have not liked what I was doing and planned on never coming back. No problem. I will still buy them coffee and ask as many questions as I can to see how they saw what we were doing. What was the feel of the place when they got there? What did they hear or see as they entered the parking lot, the building, the event? Remember, they are not wrong. What they heard or felt is what they heard or felt. It does not matter if you disagree with someone else's feelings about something. That doesn't change their experience and how they experienced it. By the way, I don't just drill questions at someone. I allow them to ask a lot of questions as well. The point is to make sure that you are seeing through the eyes of those seeing whatever it is you are launching. This will also tell you if you're using a bunch of insider language, code words that you think everyone should just know, bad or confusing signage. We just assume people know how to get where they're supposed to be. Doing something that seems weird if you've never seen it before. Like worship's a great example in church. We just assume everyone understands what's happening when everyone stands up and starts singing. We'll find out if we're making people feel uncomfortable. They will have the opportunity to ask you questions about these exact subjects. Let me reiterate a point that I made earlier. This does not mean that we need to water down what we're doing to make people feel more comfortable. People are not asking for that. We just need to help guide people through the experience. Understand the culture you're trying to reach. If you were a missionary to a foreign land, would you just go in and tell them how to live and do things and everything that is wrong with them without understanding their culture and where they are first? That might actually happen, but pretty sure it's not the most effective strategy. Ideally, we would get to know the culture, the language, the people of peace, the identifying points that match the message that we're trying to give. In other words, there'd be lots of question and answer times with the local people to maximize our impact. That's what we're doing. What we are launching needs to have the same thought process. People may go to church, but they are still heavily influenced by that local culture. What's the local or national narrative? How are you connecting people through the narrative they already understand? If people are not drawn into what you're doing, you need to be asking more questions. Isn't this what Jesus did as he walked around using stories based on local narratives the people would identify with? This is a good spot for point 2 in this Q video. Find ways to connect with people outside of your world. How can you hang with secular people? People who don't go to your church or do whatever you're launching. People who don't believe exactly like you do. Could you play poker with a group of guys that don't go to church? Don't say no if you're invited to a random party. Watch the game with some guys who drink too much and they swear too much. Be with the girls that can be a bit edgy at times. Read blogs from people who do not like church. Read books from people who left the church. Read magazines about stuff other people like. Go to the biggest movie of the moment. Watch the shows that everybody's talking about. Listen to the music all the kids love. If you don't know the real world, you're not going to be able to connect to it. If you do not connect to this world, you're not going to be able to ask the right questions that connect people to Jesus Christ. As you ask the right questions and you let people ask you questions, you'll be able to understand the heart of the people you're trying to reach. Why do they care so much about what they care about? What is that missing element to the heart of the city they live in? How are people hurting inside? What are the negative stereotypes they have of the local churches? What would be the most effective way to connect people where they are to Jesus Christ? This is why Q&A has to be part of what you're launching. Next time, we'll be talking about R, which is reproducing. If I wasn't doing the alphabet, I would have called the next video Launching Pregnant, and we'll get into that next time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.